The Narcissistic Phenomenology by Alexander Fatik. Narcissism is a type of personality organization that, whether clinically diagnosed as narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, or not, presents arguably the greatest challenge to the ethics of psychotherapy by conflating a number of views of what it means to be fully responsible. Thus, although narcissists are not presently excused from criminal responsibility on account of reduced accountability for their actions, narcissism remains one of the most pervasive issues of moral responsibility in the philosophy of psychiatry and psychotherapy. While narcissists appear to fully satisfy the cognitive and volitional criteria for criminal responsibility initially formulated as Norton rules, which have since become the bedrock of the conceptualizations of responsibility in most modern legal systems, they fail to satisfy the finer-grained criteria of value sensibility, such as that proposed by Philip Pettit. Narcissism, while threatening to become the new normal in the modern world, due to the pace with which it is spreading through the Western culture, makes it more difficult for agents to adequately choose values, and thus appears as a potential basis for granting moral excuses to the narcissist. However, it does so only deceitfully. In fact, the very sensibility that the narcissist personality develops, one that makes it more difficult for them to make proper moral choices, is subject to a particular responsibility of the narcissist seen specifically as the responsibility to change. Such a context of action-based, rather than agent-based system renders the philosophical view on the narcissist's responsibility as fairly rigid. Narcissism as a personality organization not only fails to offer moral excuses, it is in itself a ground for ascriptions of moral responsibility. Narcissistic organization of personality is generally described as one characterized by an overwhelming concern and preoccupation with self and a corresponding deficiency in responding to the needs and interests of others. Psychotherapeutic characterizations of narcissism focus on the narcissist's inability to develop empathy and a range of social emotions for others, such as loyalty, solidarity, and love. A number of increasingly narrow analytic axes have been introduced to classify the symptoms of narcissism, starting from a fairly broad division of narcissistic personalities into the grandiose and vulnerable types, and progressing to the three-pronged division of symptoms into narcissistic extroversion, antagonism and neuroticism, to finally include an additional two diagnostic criteria: distrustful self-reliance and attention-seeking. The social toxicity of narcissism is exhibited in the narcissist's inability to contribute to the quality of sociality in their group due to their exclusive focus on obtaining the so-called narcissistic supply from others, rather than being able to develop a genuine interest and care for others. This incapacitates the narcissist from engaging in genuine friendly and loving relationships and positions them as psychological predators in any group they find themselves in. On a social philosophical level, the most impactful and interesting aspects of narcissism are not necessarily those developed for the purposes of precise diagnostics, mentioned above, but rather the more general dynamics of narcissism that are closely associated with, and arise from, the mentioned symptoms that constitute the diagnostic criteria for narcissism. I will focus here on two most general symptoms and their social impact for the narcissist and for those around the narcissist, and proceed from there to discuss how the dynamics of narcissistic personality organization fares in the legal and moral contexts of responsibility as a philosophical theme. To make the conceptual issues perfectly clear, the subject of discussion here is narcissism as a type of personality organization regardless of whether or not it has been diagnosed as narcissistic personality disorder. Namely, the current diagnostic protocols in psychiatry, in order for a personality disorder to be diagnosed, require a pattern of impediment to social or personal functioning. In practice, this translates into a subjective experience of psychic pain and social failure, which means that, to be diagnosed, a narcissistic person would need to show up for a diagnostic interview with a complaint. As most narcissists don't perceive their toxicity to others as internally painful, on account of their lack of capacity for empathy, and many are socially successful because of the skills associated with attracting the attention of others and society, narcissists rarely experience discomfort associated with their personality organization, and thus rarely seek counseling or diagnosis. Those who do, receive the diagnosis of NPD, but arguably these individuals are the least toxic of all, because they are equipped with a degree of self-awareness that causes them a sense of something being wrong with them. Thus, I do not make any assumptions about the presence or absence of diagnosis of NPD and discuss both the diagnosed and undiagnosed cases under the same general heading of narcissism as a type of personality. Without delving into the various subtypes and classifications of narcissism, two most general features of narcissistic personality involve their exclusive preoccupation with themselves, specifically with obtaining validation for their shaken internal sense of self-worth, and their associated treatment of their entire social world as a potential source of narcissistic supply, where the specific relationships are supplied to cater to the validation hunger of the narcissist. It is these two facets of narcissism that pose issues of responsibility.